Hello, and thank you for joining us for this segment of Daily Bible Bites in Mount Olive Multicultural Community Church. Today, our background you see is Nashville. So we've now gone from Cleveland to Chattanooga to Nashville, and then we traveled to Cadiz, Kentucky after this. But backdrop here again is Nashville. And so we are today in 2 Samuel chapters 3 and 4. In Nashville, we know that there are tons of music. We know that we've got a lot of musicians. We know we have a lot going on there. And anytime you've got a lot of music and a lot of musicians, you've got a whole lot of debauchery that may be happening around as well. Nashville is a wonderful place. But when we think about contemporary times, we often think, oh, there's so much going on. It's absolutely horrible. People don't worship God. There's so much carnal activity going on. But when we're in this second chapter, 2 Samuel chapter 3 and 4, you're going to see that times have not changed. God said that his word doesn't change and that there's nothing new under the sun. And we're going to see the same thing way back here in the Old Testament. So starting in chapter 3, it says, that was the beginning of a long war between the followers of Saul and of David. David's position now became stronger, while Saul's dynasty became weaker. Several sons were born to David: Amnon, Chileab, Absalom, Adonijah, Shephatiah, and Ithream. Abner became a political leader among the followers of Saul. He took advantage of his position by sleeping with one of Saul's concubines. But when Ishbosheth accused Abner of this, Abner was furious. Am I a Judean dog to be kicked around like this? He shouted. After all I have done for you, to find fault with me about some woman? May God curse me if I don't take away the entire kingdom from you. Ishbosheth made no reply, for he was afraid of Abner. Then Abner sent messengers to David to surrender Israel to him in exchange for becoming commander-in-chief of the combined armies of Israel and Judah. All right, David replied, but bring me my wife Michal. David then sent this message to Ishbosheth: give me back my wife Michal. So Ishbosheth took her away from her husband Palti. Meanwhile, Abner consulted with the leaders of Israel and reminded them that they had wanted David as their king. Now is the time, he told them. Abner also talked to the leaders of the tribe of Benjamin. Then he reported to David his progress. 20 men accompanied him. As Abner left, he promised David, I will call the people of Israel and they will elect you as their king. But just after Abner left, Joab and some of David's troops returned. When Joab was told that Abner had just been there, he rushed to the king, demanding, what have you done? You know he came to spy on us. Then Joab sent messengers to Abner, tell him to come back. David knew nothing about it. When Abner arrived at Hebron, Joab pulled out a dagger and killed him in revenge for the death of his brother Asahel. When David heard, he declared, I and my people are innocent of this crime against Abner. Joab and his family are the guilty ones. Then David said to Joab and to all those who were with him, go into deep mourning for Abner. They buried Abner in Hebron. Should Abner have died like a fool, the king lamented? You were murdered, the victim of a wicked plot. David had refused to eat anything the day of the funeral, and now everyone begged him to take a bite, but David vowed that he would eat nothing until sundown. Thus, both Judah and Israel understood from David's actions that he was in no way responsible for Abner's death. And David said, a great leader has fallen today in Israel. May the Lord repay wicked men for their wicked deeds. 4. When King Ishbosheth heard about Abner's death, he and his people too were badly frightened. The command of the Israeli troops then fell to two brothers, Baanah and Rechab. Mephibosheth, who was the son of Prince Jonathan, was 5 years old at the time Saul and Jonathan were killed. When the news of the battle reached the capital, the child's nurse grabbed him and fled, but she dropped him and he became lame. Rechab and Baanah arrived at King Ishbosheth's home as he was taking a nap. They sneaked into his bedroom and cut off his head. They escaped. They presented the head to David at Hebron. Look, they exclaimed, here is the head of Ishbosheth, the son of your enemy Saul. But David replied, when someone told me Saul is dead, thinking he was bringing me good news, I killed him. And how much more shall I do to wicked men who kill a good man in his own house? So David ordered his young men to kill him. So again, we have another couple of chapters where there's a lot of devastation and a lot of bloodshed that was happening. But in chapter 3, it kind of lays a foundation for everything that happened after Saul's death. We have now that there were sons that were born to David. At this point, his 6 year, he was in a 6 year reign. And in this 6 years, he had 6 different wives and gave birth to 6 sons. I'm sorry, it's a 7 year reign, 6 different wives and 6 sons. I almost had that 666 there. I don't want to confuse anyone. But yeah, there was a 7 year reign, 6 wives and 6 sons. 6 is the number of man. So this was him in all of his carnality, because we know that at this point, there was supposed to be one wife. There was not supposed to be a man who had concubine and different wives. And David knew that he was wrong to have more than one wife. And in these births, the births of his sons, you could see that again, like we said last time, God is a God of justice. And when we do wrong, there are going to be things that happen that are not great. So in the lives of his 6 sons, we have Amnon, who raped his half sister, and he was murdered by his half brother. We have Chileab, who is also known when we go over to First Chronicles as Daniel. We've got him, and he probably died when he was very young, because we don't hear a whole lot, but he probably died when he was young, because it does mention in First Chronicles that he had a son, but he was not very old himself. We've got Absalom, who murdered his half brother, and then he led a civil war against his father David, and he attempted to murder David. So one of David's sons were trying to murder him. We've got Adonijah, who tried to seize the throne and take over David's throne. And then he tried to take one of David's concubines as his own, and then he was executed because he was very, very arrogant in all the things he was trying to do. And then we've got Shephatiah and Ithream, who either died young or they were also ungodly men or unworthy men, because they are mentioned only once. And then I think they're mentioned one more time in the scriptures. And it's a generic listing of David's sons. As we go on into this chapter, we see that Ishbosheth has accused Abner of a very, very serious crime. And he asks him, "Why have you gone into my father's concubine?" Now, Saul was dead. And so you wouldn't think that it would be a big deal that someone else was with a concubine of Saul, but this was considered a bride of the king. And so although this seems like a very salacious story, and there's, again, a lot of carnal activity that goes on here, we need to look past that and see what the real meaning of the story is. Again, we have a king who is not physically there, but his bride is taken. And we have to put that in we have to think of the idea that we are the bride of Christ. And although we don't see Christ every day, no one has the right to take us as their own, because we belong to Christ. The enemy doesn't have a right to call us his own. No one else has a right to do anything to us, because we are the bride, we are the church, and we do belong to Christ. If we go over to verse 18, when the word comes forth, "Now is the time." If you want the king, now is the time. And again, we're looking forward, like a foreshadowing of Christ. But the message is for us here. If you want Christ to be your king, now is the time. We don't want to wait ever. If we don't know where we're going when we leave this particular plane, this earth, when we take our last breath here, we have to sense the urgency there. Now is the time. We don't know that this is our last day. We don't know that 20 years from now may be our last day. We don't know. We have to see the urgency and say, now is the time. So if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know that when you leave this earth, when you take your last breath, when you live your last day, if you don't realize or don't know or have any question that you're going to heaven, that you're going to be in glory with the Lord forever and ever and ever, Now is the time. And all you have to do is say yes to him. At the end of this, I'm going to put up the sinner's prayer, and it'll walk you right through saying yes to him. You don't have to be in a public forum to do that. You just have to say it with your mouth, confess with your mouth, and believe in your heart, and then you are saved. So I'm going to put this prayer up. If you're not saved and you don't know where you're going when you leave here, now is the time. Thank you so much for joining us for this segment of Daily Bible Bites. Join us again as we will move on and film from KD's Kentucky in our next chapters as we follow along in the Bible in chronological order using the quick scan version of the Living Bible. God bless you. We hope to see you on the other side on the website at www.dltmoreministries.com. And we love you in Jesus' name. Bye-bye.